Hello, my name is Allison Jones. I understand that you've taken a series of chart training workshops. I'm doing qualitative evaluations about the training so we can learn more about how participants think about their training and what they've learned. So I'd like to ask you about your experience with the chart trainings. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can you tell me your name, please?
My name is Shay Bloomer.
Shay Bloomer, okay. Can I call you Shay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Shay, what do you do for a living? What's your profession?
I'm a nurse.
You're a nurse. How long have you been nursing?
I've been a nurse for 12 years.
Oh, interesting. So first I'd like to start out and just kind of get your immediate reaction to the training, your memories of how it felt to be in the training. What was your favorite part of the training and your least favorite part of the training?
I would say that my favorite part of the training was that the facilitators really took time to have discussions with us, and it was a very open kind of discussion that we had about a number of the topics that we were discussing, and I felt like I wasn't just being told things. It wasn't a one-way sort of experience. We were very much learning from one another, and it was exciting to be in a group with my peers and to be able to discuss the issues that we confront every day and learn different ways of approaching them.
Mm-hmm. I know the training was a while ago, but I'm wondering if in these conversations that you were having with the facilitators and with some of your colleagues, can you remember any particular topic that was especially interesting for you?
Well, one of the topics that we talked about was taking sexual histories. And as nurses who are working in HIV care and in testing, it's often important for us to take a sexual history, but it can be very uncomfortable, for example, depending on who the patient is. We have patients who come in who seem too young for us to need to take a sexual history, patients who frankly seem too old for that to still be relevant. And it was interesting to talk about how we all sort of approach it in a different way and how a number of us, frankly, were fairly uncomfortable with the topic, but having this kind of discussion about it really helped me to feel more empowered to talk to all of my clients about their sexual history.
Mm-hmm. So I heard you say that you're now taking these sexual histories differently, and I'm wondering if because you're taking them differently, if different kinds of information actually comes out from your consultation with the patient.
Yeah, I think certainly, because the truth is that I was so uncomfortable doing them before that I often sort of skipped over it or found ways to just ask yes-no questions and get through it. And so now that I'm more comfortable taking the history, I'm actually doing it with all of my patients.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of any ways that that might affect the actual care the patients receive?
Definitely, because before I wasn't thinking about a number of these patients in terms of needing the kinds of services like HIV testing, and now I realize that the elder generation is sexually active and I'm taking their sexual history, and some of them do need to be tested.
Can you tell me anything else that you remember learning from the training?
Well, one of the things that we discussed a lot at the training was patient confidentiality, and I feel like I was aware that confidentiality was important. I was not aware of the many ways that we can accidentally violate patient confidentiality. And it's caused me not only to look at my practice personally, but to also be thinking about the way things sort of happen in our clinic, because there are a number of things happening in our clinic that I actually think are making it harder for us to maintain patient confidentiality.
That's interesting. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, for example, we have a very small waiting area that's directly in front of where all the patient records come out. And we have a limited number of consultation rooms. So a number of times during the day, conversations need to happen among providers, and there aren't very many places for that to take place. And often what ends up happening is that at the desk where people are waiting to sort of sign in and things like that, we are having discussions about patients. And we always sort of think of that desk as being a barrier, but in fact it doesn't block sound. And so I think that might be an issue, that we need to have a safe space for providers to be able to have discussions about patients.
So it sounds like this is something that you've noticed at your workplace, that this area may not be, it may have been treated as a confidential space when in fact it's not. Have you noticed anything that's changing in addition to your own recognition of this?
Well, I've started whispering and trying to keep my voice very low. And I've talked to other colleagues about it to try to find another space.
And how's that going for you?
Well, we have limited resources, and so we're working on trying to identify a space, but because we really need the consultation rooms to see patients, it's been challenging.
So can you tell me about any of the activities that were done in the training that have really stuck with you?
Well, one of the activities that we did was an activity where we talked about the different words for the body parts that are in our vocabulary, because so many of our patients don't use the sort of scientific terms that we use. And so I think it helped to sort of desensitize us to that language and get us comfortable with all the language that patients might come in using. And so it was both sort of entertaining and also a little awkward at the same time.
I'm hearing you laugh as you say it, so it...
Yeah, it was fun to have sort of this group of professionals in there sort of throwing around this vocabulary. Yeah.
Okay.
Another activity that we did that I thought was really effective was that we watched these videos, these short videos that showed us something happening at a facility that might contribute to stigma and discrimination. And then we had really, really great discussions as a group around whatever it was that we were sort of seeing in the video. And, you know, those were things that I think that a lot of people in the room could relate to and had seen happen in their own facilities. So it was good to be able to have a discussion about them.
Did everybody seem to have the same reaction to the videos when you listened to them or watched them?
I would say that people universally seemed to acknowledge that what was happening in the video was wrong. But people had sort of different reactions about why it was happening or what could be done differently.
Okay, great. Thank you. Very helpful. Can you think of any additional trainings that CHART might provide which would help reducing stigma and discrimination at the facility for people living with AIDS?
Well, I think that at least in my facility, I don't really think patients are discriminated against. So I'm not sure what additional training would be necessary.
Okay. So let me make sure that I have it right and I wrote it down correctly. So I think what I have here, you mentioned earlier, I thought I heard you say that there are some things that are being done differently in terms of conversations around the desk and keeping people's voices low. So that seems to me to be a change, and now I'm hearing you say that there's not a change. So I'm wondering which part of it I'm not understanding correctly. Can you help me with that?
Well, you asked about additional training, and I'm not sure that people need additional training to change their attitudes. I think that, like what I mentioned about what's happening at the desk, and that's not people intentionally jeopardizing patient confidentiality. It's sort of a function of the limitations of our setting. So I think that some of what we need assistance with is sort of the place where we're working and how to have those kinds of conversations that are out of patients' hearing range. But I don't think that it's intentional. I don't think people are intentionally discriminating against patients.
So that's a really good example of a problem or an issue that exists at a facility that can't obviously be changed by training, but something else needs to happen, a different flow of patients or a different flow of staff so that they can discuss patients. Can you think of any other structural issues at the facility that might threaten confidentiality?
No, not really.
Okay. So that sounds like that's the primary one. Are there...
I guess one thing I think that we do need at our facility would be training for other staff beyond the healthcare providers.
Okay. For example?
For example, the janitorial staff and people who are sort of around the patients and might see patients there but who aren't healthcare providers. I think they would benefit from some training.
Can you give me an example where you've observed or heard of these employees engaging in a behavior? I'm not saying it was an intentional, but something that they may have done that a training would help ameliorate?
Yeah, for example, just a couple of weeks ago, one of our janitorial staff approached me and said, oh gosh, what are the patients in here for? Because I saw that, it was his friend's girlfriend who was in the waiting area, and she was there for an HIV test, and he was feeling like he needed to go tell his friend, and so we had a sort of one-on-one discussion about that. But that sort of alerted me to the fact that we might need to train staff beyond the healthcare staff.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any other kind of major areas of practice at your facility that you think training might be able to address?
Well, I think that our staff would benefit from more training in diabetes management. It's one of our most pressing health concerns. So I would like to see more diabetes training. I think that also some health administration training would be useful. I know of a training that is offered at Howard University that would be beneficial for some of our management or leadership staff.
So these are things that it sounds like you've thought about and looked into already. Yeah. In terms of short trainings, if we just kind of think within the realm of a day or maybe training by distance, do you have ideas about whether that would be enough for these types of topics that you've mentioned, the administrative management piece, for example, the diabetes?
Well, the administration training that I know of it's a longer training. I think that it's a 3-month program. But the diabetes training could probably be addressed through short-term trainings.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. It's been really helpful. Before we end, I was just wondering if there was any other feedback you'd like to provide about the training, how we could improve it, or things you'd like to see us do differently.
Just that I really appreciated it, and it was really useful training. And I hope that you'll keep me in mind for future training.
Great. Thank you so much, Shay.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.